In this video, you'll learn how to use the Korg NanoKontrol2 with MainStage. The NanoKontrol2 is a great way to take control of your MainStage concerts while you're performing in real time. First, we'll talk about how to connect it to your computer and get it communicating with MainStage, and then we'll show how you can map the controls to your workspace so that you can control anything you'd like while you're performing on stage. Let's check it out. Hey folks, David from Sunday Sounds here, where our focus is helping you achieve meaningful success inside of MainStage with a focus on those of you playing music at church. If you're a worship keys player or a worship leader, go ahead and subscribe to the channel because we put out new videos all the time to help you take your keys rig to the next level. Today we're talking about a particular piece of gear called the Korg NanoKontrol2. This is our favorite budget MIDI controller of choice. Depending on where you're buying, it can be between $50 and $80 USD, and it's an amazing portable way to take control of your keys software. Now, you can program MainStage to do all sorts of things automatically for you, but sometimes, a lot of the time, you just need some hands-on control to be able to tweak things in the moment. And we think the NanoKontrol2 is probably the best budget-friendly option for taking just that kind of control. So much so that our Sunday Keys template is one-to-one designed for plug-and-play functionality with the Korg NanoKontrol2. You can see our Sunday Keys MainStage template on screen now and how it directly correlates to the Korg NanoKontrol2. That gives you on-the-fly control over the volumes of sounds, various effects, and modifiers. So you're not locked into just the sounds you've created in advance. You can actually flow dynamically and expressively as you perform. So the Korg NanoKontrol2 is an awesome controller, and in this video, we're going to start at the ground floor. I'm going to teach you how to get it connected to MainStage and then map it to do whatever you want. So we're not going to start here in Sunday Keys. We'll end up here in a little bit. So if you want to see how the NanoKontrol2 works with Sunday Keys, make sure you keep watching this video. But let's start at the bare fundamentals. So we're going to load a new MainStage concert, and we're going to choose the Keyboard Minimalist Concert, which is one of the stock MainStage concerts. While this loads, I want to talk about how you can connect the NanoKontrol2 itself to your computer on a basic level. It's going to come with a USB mini cable to regular or traditional USB type A. So depending on your computer, you can just plug that right in, or you could plug it into a dongle if your computer has USB-C ports. I'm a big fan of purchasing a USB mini to USB-C cable, so I don't need an adapter and I can just run that one cable. The important thing to know about the NanoKontrol2 is that it is plug and play with all computers. It's a class-compliant USB device. That means it doesn't need any special drivers. It should work right out of the box. Now, if you find that you plug your controller in and it doesn't work right out of the box, perhaps you've made some modifications to it or you've bought it secondhand, you can solve most of these problems by just factory resetting the device. And that's really simple. Just hold down this button, and this button, all three at the same time while you have the controller unplugged. Plug it back in. You'll see some lights flash, and it's factory reset. Only takes about 3 seconds to do, and then the NanoKontrol2 is brand new out of the box in terms of its plug and play functionality. Now we've got the Keyboard Minimalist MainStage concert open. It's loaded in edit mode. We can switch between MainStage's modes here at the top left corner. Let's go to layout mode. The first thing I'm going to do is click and drag over all these boxes and delete them just to make some space in the workspace. And then I'm going to bring all of this stuff down to the very bottom of the screen. Just want to clear up some real estate for other things that we're going to do. Once you have your NanoKontrol2 connected to MainStage, you can test it out by just moving a knob or a fader. And notice here in the Midi input monitor that I'm seeing this reflected inside of MainStage. That's a quick way for you to know that MainStage is connected to your NanoKontrol2, and you're going to be able to assign it. Now, terminology, you will make assignments between hardware and the workspace in layout mode, and then in edit mode, you can take the workspace and map it to whatever controls you like. So when we talk about assignments, we're going to be working in layout mode with real MIDI hardware. Then in edit mode, we're going to create mappings, which are between the workspace and channel strips. Don't get too hung up on that terminology. We're going to talk through it step by step. Let's start off with adding some screen controls to the workspace. I'm going to be in the grouped controls tab here because it makes it super convenient. Let's grab 8 round knobs, then 8 vertical faders, and then lastly, let's go crazy, 8 buttons. So you might notice that we have 8 knobs, 8 faders, and 3 rows of 8 buttons here on the NanoKontrol2. Of course, lots of additional buttons for transport and control on the left side, but we're just going to focus on this area here. So let's go ahead and assign all of these controls. This does not have to be difficult. Just click on a control, click Assign, then move the control you want to assign, and then click the next control. You'll notice that Assign is going to stay glowing red. This allows you to quickly just go down the entire row and make all of these assignments. Now, it's always a good idea to travel the full sweep of whatever control you're assigning, because MainStage, when you're initially making an assignment, listens to the MIDI data it receives, and that determines how it behaves. So I'm going all the way up and all the way down a couple times, and once I see the MainStage control following along, I move on to the next. When it comes to assigning buttons, then that means you want to press them at least a couple of times. There are different styles of buttons that send data on the press and the release, that send alternating data, or that only send data when they're pressed. MainStage is smart enough to handle all of those different styles as long as you give it enough input to learn. Okay, so now we've got all of these controls assigned, and we can see that they respond one-to-one as we make these moves, and that only took about a minute. Now, one thing I want to highlight that kind of hangs people up sometimes with the NanoKontrol2, you might have noticed a couple controls, specifically Fader 2, also seems to be controlling my mod wheel here. That's because Fader 2 sends on the same MIDI CC number as the default modulation CC, which is a little bit confusing. MainStage's concerts default to listening to all MIDI data. So all we need to do here to fix this is select the mod wheel and assign it to our specific controller. So for me now, I'm moving the physical mod wheel on my controller. Or if you don't have a mod wheel, we could just go to Channel and select Unassigned, and then it would stop listening to everything. The other control that throws people off a little bit is this record button right here. It sends on the same MIDI CC as the default CC for sustain pedal. So right now I'm pressing my sustain pedal, it's listening, but also when I press this button, the sustain pedal is being triggered. So that'd be a big mess if you happen to press that button while you're sustaining notes. All of a sudden your sustain would be interrupted. So again, all we're going to do is assign it and make a specific assignment to our hardware controller, or if we for some reason weren't using a sustain pedal, we would select unassigned here in the list. Okay, so now we can move this fader and we can press this button, and these other controls are not going to be affected. So that's it. Our workspace is set up. We could take all the time we wanted to style it, to fit more in. We could add more buttons. We could make connections between these buttons here. So let's go ahead and do this for the patch, next, and previous buttons. I'm going to go ahead and select these buttons here and here. You might notice that these set buttons have some default assignments. We don't actually want those. MainStage is trying to do the work for us, but since we're using different options, we're going to choose Channel Unassigned. So now our next and previous patch buttons are right here. And these set buttons, honestly, I'm not a huge fan of having set buttons, so I'm just going to delete those. Don't really need them. Now that you've got all of your hardware assigned, one last thing that I recommend you do is select all these controls and set MIDI through to Do Not Pass Through. This will help MainStage avoid passing through some of these default MIDI controls. So then when we go over to edit mode, we're going to see this little exclamation point next to all of these controls. That means there's no current mapping for this patch, but we could add one to any of these controls and take control of it in real time. So we've got this electric piano. Nice basic electric piano sound. Let's say we wanted to control the volume of it for this patch. So let's click this fader, choose map parameter, and then click on the volume fader for the channel strip. Now your minimum and maximum values will always be the full highest and lowest values possible. Sometimes you don't really want that. Oftentimes, especially for volume, I recommend setting that max range to be no higher than 0. Now we can use this fader to adjust the sound in real time. Pretty cool. Let's take this another level. Let's go add a delay effect. I'm going to add an instance of stereo delay. Let's make this a dotted eighth note delay. Pretty cool. So now I'm going to add a mapping to this knob so we can control how prominent that delay effect is. So I'm selecting the knob, then clicking map parameter. Now in the stereo delay plugin, we've got two output mix controls. So first I'm going to click the left, then I'm going to click the plus icon to add another mapping, and I'm going to click right. So now I've got mix left here that I can adjust and mix right. When you're done mapping, make sure you always deselect map parameter, otherwise if you click on something else, you're accidentally going to overwrite whatever mapping you just made. So now I've got this one knob here adjusting the delay level. Pretty cool. And as I move that control, you can see it respond there. Now, this says mix left because that's the first mapping. That's not really an accurate description of what this is doing, but MainStage makes it easy to overwrite those default labels. With the knob selected, just click on the Attributes tab, then click Replace Parameter Label, and you can type in whatever you'd like. So let's just say delay mix. We can also do that here. It says volume by default, but we don't know what instrument that is, so we could say EP volume. Now we've got control over the volume of this electric piano. We can adjust this delay effect to taste. Let's add one more effect to this electric piano. I'm going to open up the electric piano plugin, and we can see that here in MainStage we've got some cool effects like chorus, tremolo, phaser. We could bring up this chorus effect. It's really cool. Let's go ahead and map this effect to this button. And since it's a button, we're just going to be able to turn it on and off effectively. So I'm going to click the button with my plugin open. I'm going to choose map parameter and then click intensity. Now we can see the shade value is off, the button on is 100%, and the button off is 50%. But let's say, we always want a little bit of chorus. So we're going to set that button off value to 20%, and then maybe 100% is a little bit too over the top. So let's say 70%. Remember, when you're done making your mapping, always hit map parameter again. Now I can press this button, and we can see the button reflected here, and we can see this intensity knob jumping between two positions. So here's like sort of light chorus and a more aggressive chorus. So again, right now it just says chorus int, short for intensity, and that's not really helpful to us, so we're just going to say chorus. So now we've got a good handle on this instrument for live performance, where we'd be able to say, oh, the electric piano is a little bit too strong in the mix, I want to bring it down, or I need to be a little bit more lush for this moment, let me turn on this chorus, or I want to add something rhythmic, let me bring in this delay. And having something physical to be able to make these adjustments is much quicker and more accurate than having to go with your keyboard and mouse and grab this delay mix control and click and drag it up and down. Having hardware to be able to make assignments to the workspace is one of the best features of MainStage. So we've got one instrument sort of dialed in now. It's an electric piano. Let's go ahead and make this a layered patch. And we're going to add another channel strip. And let's go ahead and browse the default channel strips here. Going to go to synthesizer and choose pad. See how this sounds. Pretty cool pad sound. So let's go ahead and just add this instrument. We're going to make some mappings real quick to get some more control over it. So let's start off with the volume. So map parameter, I'm going to click the volume of the channel strip again. Now, let's say that I never wanted this pad to be able to get quite as loud as my electric piano, because you might have noticed when I play both, that pad is definitely overshadowing the electric piano. So here's what I can do. I can actually set the shade value and the max to be maybe -8. So then I don't have to try and dial this in the moment. I can just flick that all the way up, and it's only going to go up to -8. Adjusting the ranges of your mappings here is one of the most important things you can do to really make it easy to nail these tweaks on stage during live performance. It's really not likely you're going to be able to dial in an exact value on the fly while you're transitioning from a verse to a chorus, but you can go from 0 to 100, or maybe from 50 to 100 and then back down to 0. So you can adjust the ranges here to make it way more likely for you to land in the ballpark you're going for. Now let's go ahead and name this pad volume. Okay, so next up, let's give ourselves some control over the ambience. Now, this pad sound, I'm going to bring this volume down. It's pretty dry, so let's add a reverb effect. I like silver verb for pad sounds. Yeah, and the default's working just fine, so let's go ahead and add reverb wet amount to this knob. And I'm going to set the max range to be about 60. I don't want to go wild with the amount of reverb. I don't want to have to purposely avoid going that high. Now that I've got this mapping, I could go ahead and name it pad verb. Make it a little easier for me to remember what's what. So we've got that going on. Okay, so let's go ahead and add one more real-time control for this pad sound. We've got a chorus on the EP. Let's do something different for the pad. Let's add a Midi effect, specifically the chord trigger Midi effect. Really great plugin inside of MainStage. I'm going to load the single intervals octave default preset. All this does is play an octave above along with the original input note. It's a really cool effect. Turn it on and it instantly adds tons of extra high frequency content and energy to your sound. So let's take control over this in real time. We've got the chord trigger effect here. Let's select this button, click map parameter, and then I'm just going to click the bypass button for chord trigger. So now, deselect map parameter. When this button is highlighted, chord trigger is off. When it's not highlighted, chord trigger is on. And that's a little bit backwards from what you might intuit, right? Yeah, lit up would typically mean on and not lit up would mean off. Some of the default mapping behaviors in MainStage will feel a little bit backwards like this, but all you need to do is choose range mode and then click inverted. And now you'll see that on translates to on and off translates to off. Now bypass, again, not a very intuitive label, so we're just going to name this octave. And actually, let's make it even a little bit more specific, pad octave. Now we know this whole section is sort of devoted to our pad sound. So now we've got chord trigger off, and then that octave on. Bring some of this reverb back in. We can bring in our electric piano. And then we can adjust the volume to make sure that that piano stands out. So now we've got useful performance mappings for this specific patch that would give us all the control we need to use these two instruments well. We have the flexibility to control their volume, to add interest by specifically tweaking effects for the right moment or for the right song. And we could repeat this process for as many patches as we needed to in our concert. Now, if you haven't figured it out yet, this does take a little bit of time and you have to have a goal in mind for making these mappings. But in terms of how long it takes to connect the NanoKontrol2 to the workspace in layout mode, it's really not that complicated. And once you've done so, you can save your concert and then use that as a template for all of the patch design that you're going to do from that point on. Now, I want to give you a taste of what it looks like to have an entire workflow built around all of the assignments and all of the mappings being pre-programmed, ready to play for you. We are back inside the Sunday Keys template, which comes pre-assigned to the Korg NanoKontrol2, so you don't have to create the custom workspace, you don't have to do any assigning. Everything is automatically assigned, and all of the modifiers, the volumes, the effects are pre-programmed, changing through patches, tap tempo. All these useful controls are ready to play, and it's a great way to just immediately be ready to go inside a MainStage, especially if you're a worship keys player. And you've got all sorts of useful effects and modifiers, great sounds. Really great effects for pads like shimmer. tone controls for these pads as well, so you can dial them in to fit just right in the mix. Awesome piano sounds, lead sounds, but these modifiers being pre-assigned and pre-mapped also makes it really easy for you to dial in a patch in advance. So let me show you how this works. We've got this Grand Beyond Measure patch. And that's a cool patch, but let's say we know we need to play a particular song. It starts off with this very sort of low-key piano sound, and there's not really much else going on. So we could use our NanoKontrol2 to dial in a starting place for this patch sound. So maybe we know that we need it to sort of have this sort of washed out sound. So we're going to turn on the octave, keep the reverb in, turn on the mellow modifier, and then we're going to bring down the tone, which is going to affect the brightness. Also going to bring out this synth bass, and I've taken out the volume of all the other sounds. So I'm just going to start off with this solo piano. So this is maybe my starting point, and then let's say I want to bring in a delay effect. And that's probably a little bit over the top, especially for a subdued intro, so we could bring that back down. And then we could maybe experiment, add in a little reverse delay. Then we're getting to verse 2, so we could bring this tone up, maybe introduce this pad sound. Then as the song continues to build, maybe we want to lose that delay, add in a little bit of shimmer for this pad sound. Maybe we're hitting the big build of the song, so we're going to bring in these other two sounds here. Then maybe the biggest moment, we're going to turn off that reverse and mellow. And then we have the flexibility with this controller to bring all that back out. Take that octave out. Maybe we're right back where we started. The reason I want to show you this example is because hardware like the NanoKontrol2 is not just a useful tool for live performance, but with a template like Sunday Keys, it's actually also a shortcut for your preparation. Because rather than opening up a ton of channel strips and tweaking plugin values one at a time, you can really quickly dial in perfect starting points, ending points, middle points for all of your patches. You can save them, and then you can just switch through your patches to hit all of these beats automatically. So whenever you've dialed in the starting settings that you'd like in MainStage, all you do is hit Command S to save. Then the next time you select this patch, these starting values are going to automatically be recalled. So we can name this Song Intro. And then we could either use these faders to flow, just like I did a second ago, through the song dynamically, or if we wanted to, we could actually duplicate the patch and we could name it Song Big, and we could set different starting values for everything. Maybe we want this synth bass to come back in, we want mellow off, tone all the way up, nice big delay, maybe a little bit of shimmer on this string pad. We're going to save that, Command S. So now we can start the song with our intro. And then when we're ready to go big, and then we can flow right back. And that transition is perfect. Super smooth. So this is why I'm such a big fan of having hardware controllers assigned and mapped to the way you use MainStage. It can save you on stage and give you the power to flow dynamically, fill all the right space, and have control over the moment, but it can also save you a ton of time up front during your preparation by allowing you to avoid lots of plugin diving and instead just work with what you've programmed into the workspace. So that's how to connect the Korg NanoKontrol2 to a blank MainStage concert, assign it, map it to controls, and an example of how we've built out this entire workflow inside of the Sunday Keys template. If you'd like to learn more about the NanoKontrol2, we've linked to it on Amazon in the description. If you purchase via that link, we receive a small kickback at no extra cost to you. Thanks for supporting the channel in that way. And if you'd like to learn more about the Sunday Keys template, we'll also put a link in the description. That's our all-in-one, done-for-you worship keys rig that will give you amazing results from the worship keys position at your church. If you found this video helpful, share it with a worship leader or keys player you know. Give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment with what your biggest takeaway was. We would love to talk with you. Thanks for supporting us at Sunday Sounds. Have a great day.